There's something happening in the horror genre right now, and we need to talk about it. When you think of indie horror, what games come to mind? Amnesia, Outlast, Soma. These are some of the most popular indie horror titles to date, and each one can lay claim as pioneers in the psychological horror subgenre. For years now, psychological and survival horror have dominated the space. This isn't thanks just to these titles. It also harkens back to the classic 90s era horror games that spurred the entire movement. Beyond that, there's good psychological science behind the popularity of these games. They elicit genuine fear through perfecting tension mechanics that are biologically designed to hack your brain. But we'll get into that in a different video. There's an interesting phenomenon that's happening in horror lately. It's not new mechanics or mind-bending atmospheric design, though indie devs are still managing to absolutely revolutionize the space when it comes to those. What we're seeing is something entirely new. Entire subgenres are popping up within horror and garnering huge amounts of followers seemingly overnight. While innovative subgenres is nothing new, there are a few fresh styles that are rather quickly separating from the pack. Today, we're breaking down 3 up-and-coming subgenres in the horror category. I'll be discussing what makes them so special and why it's just such a great signal for the future of the indie horror industry. Now come walk with me and allow me to expose you to the shadows as we discuss 3 indie horror subgenres that are changing the space forever. Have you ever played a game that just sort of felt right? The type of game that takes you into its warm embrace and doesn't let go. Never mind that the world is ending around you, this unreliable narrator is just so damn relatable. In the cozy horror genre, it's often hard to nail down exactly what makes a game so cozy. But it's definitely something you know when you feel it. After gaining traction in literature, cozy horror first made its way into gaming in the early 2020s, with standout titles like Strange Horticulture and Dredge. Though there's a very real argument to be made that Luigi's Mansion truly pioneered the genre all the way back in 2001. These games offered groundbreaking atmospheric tension while managing to maintain a folly that just kept them so incredibly approachable. Today, cozy horror has blossomed into its own category, with indie developers offering new entries almost weekly. Consisting of such a broad array of topics and concepts, this subgenre is an excellent example of the creativity and talent that is alive and well in the horror genre right now. What really stands out about this category is its low barrier of entry. Cozy horror is a genre that anyone can get into. With a focus on vibes over jump scares, and many still do offer some incredible jump scares. These games are broadening what it means to play horror and introducing new players and developers into the space. I'm already seeing cozy horror become a new gateway genre into the greater horror category, and it just feels so nice. Our next category is a bit more narrow, but it's catching on like wildfire. Like a hyper-realistic simulation of a wildfire. Physics horror is another recently appearing subgenre that takes its roots from the late 2000s survival horror and the rise of physics-focused mechanics that we've seen in gaming as a whole ever since that time. Although you really could trace this one back to Luigi's Mansion as well. Whether it's object physics, movement physics, or environmental physics, realistic manipulation of physics has become an almost universal selling point. But the important distinction that we see in horror is how those skills tests of the physics manipulation mechanics are inextricably linked to the psychological distress of the horror environment. It becomes so much harder to deliver precise mechanical results when there is outside pressure. Lately, some games have popped up that rely on physics as the primary source of tension for their game. 2 standout examples of this are 2025's White Knuckle and the 2026 release of Idols of Ash. Each relies on the oldest and most terrifying source of tension we know: gravity. These games test both your skills and your fortitude by forcing you to critically analyze the environment and mechanically execute a series of tasks that are often difficult on their own, but become near superhuman feats once you factor in external threats. While these external threats certainly build tension independently, the real fear comes from how they interact with the primary threat of failed mechanics. In Idols of Ash, it's rarely the giant centipede that kills you. It's the wildly risky jump that you took and missed because you knew he was right behind you. This combination of disciplines also attracts a different kind of crowd. While cozy horror tends to be more about settling in and enjoying yourselves, physics horror is about focusing and digging in and pushing yourself. The skills and accuracy needed to succeed in games like this is only developed through repetition, and for some, this mechanical mastery is the game in itself. These games have seen a massive spike in popularity amongst speedrunners and achievements-focused gamers. This subgenre, while still fairly narrow, appeals to a very important segment of the gaming community. These games focus on mastery of skill, signal an important shift in the horror genre as a whole. It represents a further broadening of the scope of what makes horror horror, and it pushes the limits of what the horror genre can do in a way that I think will eventually ripple through the entire developer community. Look out for more physics-centric games in the future, and keep an eye out for how developers use this feedback loop moving forward. Our last subgenre today is Mascot Horror. Now you might be saying to yourself, Pete, Five Nights at Freddy's came out over a decade ago. And to that I'd say, my name's not Pete. It never has been. But also, while Freddy Fazbear did first grace our screens all the way back in 2014, and other ancestors of the genre emerged even before that, and yes, Luigi is essentially his older brother's taller and more timid mascot. In all seriousness, Luigi's Mansion is a great early example of familiarity being used against players to build dread. We're in the midst of an undeniable resurgence of mascot horror. Between abandoned theme parks, abandoned toy factories, and abandoned... wait, that can't be right. No f***ing way. Steam has been flooded over the last couple of years with a ton of fun and exciting, albeit abandoned settings, with one other very important thing in common. This genre works for a lot of reasons, not least of which is the presumption of trust. The growth of the urbex scene certainly doesn't hurt, but the core premise relies on the inherent trust in the characters. For many of us, we're drawn to mascot horror because of the familiarity. We grew up with mascots we could trust, with brands and iconography that absolutely would never hurt us or cause childhood obesity. And it's that nostalgia that connects so many people to the mascot horror genre. Whether you're old enough to realize that the concept of the anthropomorphic animatronic band coming to life was once a very real, very persistent fear for so many of us millennials, this genre still manages to land with the younger crowd for the same reasons. You want to hold on to a piece of that childhood, and when those same characters that you so badly want to trust turn on you, it hurts. This resurgence of an already established subgenre is an incredible sign for horror as a whole. It shows us that enough developers are so inspired by the first generation of mascot horror that it influenced a whole new wave of the genre. This new wave takes the best from its forefathers and builds on them, sparking unique mechanics and all kinds of new and fun ways to explore abandoned spaces. But it also inspires others. The developers in this subgenre almost seem to be in a competition to shatter millennial dreams with the best take on this category. This competition is exactly what the industry needs. These mostly friendly rivalries are what drive innovation in the space and ultimately are incredibly healthy so long as the relationships don't turn toxic. Seeing this competition and the innovation that comes with it bodes incredibly well for the future of horror as a genre. In conclusion, Luigi's Mansion was one of the most important games of its time, even though 11-year-old me didn't fully appreciate its significance and contribution to the gaming industry. By now you've probably figured out that we've got a pretty wide definition of what horror is here at the Umbral Almanac. While some purists may disagree with my classifications, for the purpose of this channel, we're defining horror as any game that intentionally incorporates tension as a primary tool for the explicit purpose of causing fear or panic. How those tension levers are manipulated is entirely unique to each game, and that has little bearing on its placement in the genre. That said, even some of the games that I mentioned here kind of teeter on the edge of that already very broad definition. To be explicitly clear, I'm willing to cover any game that looks cool that also has at least some horror elements. All said, the state of horror is strong. Everything that I've learned from my coverage of the horror genre in recent years tells me that the future is incredibly bright. We're seeing the resurgence of old concepts, the introduction of new ideas, and the development of individual mechanics into entirely unique subgenres. All these signs point to a vibrant tomorrow for the genre that I honestly just can't wait to watch unfold. Hey folks, thanks for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, be sure to like and subscribe for more discussions, reviews, gameplay, and much, much more. And feel free to drop a comment down below with your thoughts on the subject or just what you want to see me cover next. I'm always looking for new games or topics to cover on the channel. Thanks for watching, and until next time, stay curious, stay vigilant, and keep those shadows fed.